When Ubisoft founded a studio in Montreal, they made fairly low-budget titles like Donald Duck Goin' Quackers. But after a few years, the studio decided to go for broke and made a number of high-budget projects. After a few successful Tom Clancy games, their next title would take on the name of one of gaming's most legendary franchises, The Prince of Persia. When The Sands of Time released in November 2003, it completely redefined what action-adventure games could be. Ubisoft Montreal had more than just a hit. They had a game that helped define its generation. By any measure, the creative genius who drove that game to staggering heights was Patrice Désilets. Ubisoft recognized that they had a rising star on their hands. So after Sands of Time's release, they asked Désilets to begin designing them a new Prince for next-gen consoles. But as that project evolved, the new Prince of Persia game became a brand new property, a bold and startlingly original idea in a play-it-safe industry. Over time, the series no one saw coming has climbed to the top echelon of gaming franchises, leaving its naysayers in the dust to become the new jewel in Ubisoft's crown. There were a number of things Ubisoft wanted to accomplish after the success of Prince of Persia. Obviously, they wanted direct sequels, which came in the coming years. But with the next generation of consoles on the way, Ubisoft also wanted to take full advantage of the new hardware from day one. To showcase Ubisoft's technical abilities, the Montreal crew got to work on Anvil, their own proprietary engine. Anvil would allow them to show off how much more next-gen games could do than the current generation. Huge environments and huge crowds to populate them. And the man they gave Anvil to was Patrice Désilets, the creative director on Sands of Time. With his mandate to make a new next-gen Prince, Désilets dug into the actual history of the Middle East. And as he did so, more and more he became fascinated with the story of a clan of assassins who were active during the Crusades. As his team continued their research, it became obvious that the bloody story that they were developing didn't fit with the Prince of Persia. Quite by accident, they had stumbled into whole new territory. And so, the project was spun off of Prince of Persia completely and became its own property, Assassin's Creed. It would be based on real-world history set in a historically accurate Holy Land during the Third Crusade. The emphasis Désilets wanted was on going anywhere and interacting with everything. The game's hero would be given free rein to do whatever he wanted, but his actions would be remembered by the crowd around him. If he was stealthy, he'd be able to blend in. If he was obvious, he would stand out. A new gameplay mechanic they called social stealth. Creating such a world was a gigantic task. They would have to make an entirely open countryside with multiple cities and then make each brick of each building a part of the gameplay. Not only was this difficult because of the sheer size of the project, Ubisoft had never made an open-world game before, but because it would change the normal game design process. With architecture suddenly becoming part of the core gameplay experience, the game's artists found themselves acting as designers, a fact that the game's actual designers didn't appreciate. The story evolved in unexpected directions as well. The Crusades-era game would actually take place in the near future. The idea was that a humble bartender would be kidnapped by a powerful corporation and put into the Animus, a device that could read not only his memories, but the memories of his ancestors. As it turned out, Desmond Miles comes from a long line of badass assassins, who have been at war with the secretive Knights Templar since, you guessed it, the Crusades. But while Désilets and his team were crafting their next-gen opus, another, smaller crew inside Ubisoft Montreal was busy making a current-generation title. The original plan was for two completely different Assassin's Creed games, with different plots and cities to hit the market at once. However, for undisclosed reasons, the second game was eventually scrapped. Nothing of this game has ever been released to the public. After 4 years of work, Assassin's Creed was finally ready to swing onto store shelves in November 2007. It wasn't alone. The brand new IP that Ubisoft was betting its holiday season on was competing with some of the biggest titles of the year, including Call of Duty 4, Halo 3, and the first Mass Effect. Désilets and his team had only their good reputation from Prince of Persia. Would it be enough? The early word was not very encouraging. Assassin's Creed divided critics around the world. While some absolutely loved it and gave it top scores, others absolutely hated it and ran it into the ground. Its praises included stunning visuals, an intuitive control scheme, fluid and seamless animations, and a fantastic setting that few games went to. Its critiques included repetitive missions, excruciating travel times, a small number of things to actually do, and repetitive missions. Strangely, nearly all critics agreed on these strengths and weaknesses. They only disagreed on whether the pros outweighed the cons. With strong competition and mixed signals from the press, the gamble to put Assassin's Creed into the holiday mix seemed like it might not pay out. Instead, to everybody's surprise, including Ubisoft's, Assassin's Creed became the fastest-selling new game in US history. Worldwide, it sold 2.5 million copies in its first month alone, on its way to 8 million sold in total. Despite all the bad press, enough people liked the original concept and amazing gameplay to make it a smash. With a hit on their hands, Ubisoft wasn't about to let 2008 go by without more assassinations. In February of 2008, Assassin's Creed Altair's Chronicles released for the Nintendo DS. It acted as a prequel to the main game and was later ported to mobile devices, including the iPhone and Palm's webOS. But that wasn't the big news. The big announcement came on April 1st when Assassin's Creed producer Jade Raymond showed off the first footage of the next game in the franchise, which showed Altair in the future. And as amazing as that was, the trailer ended on an even bigger surprise when Altair removed his robes to reveal his true identity: Solid Snake. Of course, the trailer was an April Fool's joke that both Ubisoft and Konami were in on. But when Metal Gear Solid 4 released, Altair's robes turned out to be an unlockable bonus. It was the first sign of how ubiquitous the franchise would become. And indeed, when 2009 rolled around, the young franchise would emerge from the shadows into every platform imaginable.